Hey guys, welcome back to the Cultural Shift. This is Faisal Villani from Villani Consulting. I'm super excited today. I actually have one of my oldest, if not friends, at least acquaintances, somebody I've known for maybe over 2 decades now, I think, at least. On this show, I've got Rosey Jinah. Rosie, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I really am. I'm very excited to have you here. I know we've been trying to schedule this for quite some time now. I'm glad we were able to make it.
Yes. First off, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited to be on here with you and learn and grow with you. So let me know what we're going to talk about.
Perfect. Yeah, you're kind of setting the bar a little high for me, but I'm hoping I can make it work. I honestly I've always wondered, and I guess I've never asked you this, is why the name Lead of Faith? I love it. I want to know the history behind it.
Sure, sure. So a little bit background, right? I was in the educator world for 2 decades now, long time. And started off in my college years working full time as a residence assistant where I lived, and quickly jumped to becoming director of residence life. And I found my passion was working with students. I knew that that's what I wanted to study. Even when I graduated, I quickly got my master's in higher education
Okay.
and worked in student affairs for almost, I would say, the first decade of my life. And then I moved on to working for our community professionally, where I led a mentoring program, a nationwide mentoring program. And in addition to that, something that's always been a part of my life has been service, doing service in various capacities. This year, I would say, as I left those portions of my life, I took what I call a leap of faith and
Okay.
started a Lead of Faith. And this name just struck to me because one, I study leadership on the daily.
Yeah.
And a big part of almost all of my work was to provide training to leaders across the nation. So whether it was in the my work at the universities with the people I was working with, to the mentoring program from our local project teams, to our national governance board members, to anyone I worked with. And through that, I found my passion of providing these type of trainings and support and doing the motivational speaking, doing a lot of different things in the leadership world. And then faith has always been a part of who I am. So I guess it just worked out perfect when I took this leap of faith and started Lead of Faith in hopes to provide everyone and anyone I encounter some sort of inspiration, and to also let people know, right, that you are a leader, and there's not a title or a specific role you have to be a leader.
Yeah. I was actually just on a podcast earlier this morning, and one of the things that we talked about is the older companies, the hierarchical model where there was a frontline employee, then a manager, then a senior manager and executive. That model is so outdated. Everybody's a leader in their position now, and the most successful companies in the world are the ones who behave that way, where they've empowered their employees to make strategic decisions because they're the ones handling these issues rather than somebody coming from top management who hasn't dealt with the issues on a day-to-day basis, right? So you talk a lot about leadership, and that's what fascinates me about you so much is leadership. I believe leadership has been talked about for ages, but it's finally being understood on a deeper level now than it ever has been before. So tell me your thoughts on leadership. What is an ideal leader in your mind?
So, for someone who studies leadership on the daily, I will say leadership is complex.
Yeah.
And one big part about being a leader is to be open to learning and being a lifelong learner, right? I think that's a very important thing to think about, and what a lifelong learner and what education means, right? And education does not have to be formal.
Right.
It could be where you're reading something new. It could be where this is my first time doing this with you, right?
Yeah.
These are all opportunities to learn and grow. And I always tell everyone, keep your growth game strong,
Yeah.
because as we learn and continue to learn, things are changing, sometimes yearly, sometimes monthly, and in these uncertain times, almost daily,
Daily.
right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's one definition of what leadership is. I
Okay.
also think, you brought up this hierarchy of how organizational charts are typically seen,
Mhm.
where there's someone at the top, then there's someone that reports to that person, reports to that person, reports to that person. I really challenge people who have any sort of org structure. I understand that there's people you'll report to, but I
Mhm.
would love to see a model where it's more of a circle,
Yes.
right? Because we're a team. You can still see people you need to report to, but it doesn't show one person above another person or a
Yeah.
particular title being above another. I think the person who's cleaning the windows at your office to the person who's the CEO, they both are equally important and should get the same mutual respect. Um,
Agreed.
doesn't matter, right? What your title is.
Yeah.
And then the second part that came to my mind was looking at just titles. I don't know if it's a society thing, but it is kind of ingrained in our heads that if you have this particular title, you're a leader. So for example, when I ask my 3-year-old, okay, tell
Mhm.
me a time you've been a leader, he may say, oh, I was a line leader. Again,
Yeah.
this title. I
Right.
was a line leader in class, so I was a leader.
Right.
And so even at that age, right, we're embedding that to be a leader, you have to have a specific title.
Yeah.
Where my older son, when he tells me I helped younger brother learn how to put his shoe on, I remind him, wow, right? That's a great leader you're being by helping someone grow in whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I think our society, like you said, we're fascinated by labels, right? As just human beings, we're used to labels, and I think labels are more managerial based. A label makes you a hierarchical manager, but not all managers are leaders, right? And it's very, very true in most companies, right? A manager is somebody who's great at their job, did it really well, so now they got promoted, but their skills don't equally transfer over. You need a lot of soft skills to be a leader. And the part that sucks is most of the times managers get promoted based on their technical skills, not their soft skills. And then we kind of sit there and ask ourselves, I don't get why this didn't work out. Well, you never trained that person to be a leader. You just picked him up from a great position, emptied that seat, moved him into a different position, and now both people are frustrated because he or she is not the best leader you want, and that job's not being done the way you want it to be done in the first place. Yeah.
You bring such an interesting point. I think if I had to define leadership, it's almost getting all of the set of these different skills
Yeah.
that people need
Mhm.
in order to be the best leader. And I think that's something that differentiates what Lead a Faith is focused on doing is
Yeah.
ensuring people, one, love what they do, right?
Yeah.
And provide them that sort of coaching, conversation, consultation on figuring out if they're in a position where they
Mhm.
will be successful. And the first thing is you have to be passionate about what you're doing and not just going somewhere that is a toxic environment or something that you just don't enjoy.
Yeah.
And then two, providing all of those set of skills
Mhm.
that now researchers are recognizing that is needed for great leaders, right? And it starts at a very young age
Yeah.
to student leadership, all the way to, as I said, you're a forever learner, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're the CEO or even an owner of a company. There's always room to grow. I grow every day, right? Even in this position, I
Right.
wouldn't say I know it all. It's something that I constantly strive to learn.
Yeah.
And then within those soft skills, right? And that's something we can discuss, like what are the most important to you and to the values of your organization, your business, or even your classroom, or whatever you might be doing. what that looks like. Is it empathy? Is it learning to manage your emotions? Is it that emotional intelligence? Is it just, human, when you think about human development, there's just so many different skills that come within that. So, what are those important things to you, right? If it's something to think about.
You bring up empathy, and I find that to be a very fascinating skill. I feel like empathy was looked down on upon for a long, long time, right? And when you talk about empathy, it became a buzzword. But the more research that I've done, the more I've dealt with people, the more interactions that I've had, at least according to me, I put empathy as one of the top skills that any leader should have, because it takes a lot of compassion, it takes a lot of listening power, and it takes a lot of patience to really truly understand what the other person's saying without the ability to just react and give them an answer. And the title brings some type of entitlement as well, right? When you're a director, when you're a chief executive officer, when you're in that area, that title really truly entitles you to interrupt people and say, this is what I want to get done right now. That's what I'm focusing on. But again, the most successful ones are the ones that realize that title makes them a servant. It makes them somebody who needs to service their employees rather than thinking the other way around. So what are your thoughts on empathy as a soft skill for leadership?
Oh, it is very important. And again, empathy can be looked upon in different ways, right? Some people think they have empathy when somebody shares something, especially that's vulnerable or that's difficult,
Right.
something you haven't gone through or experienced, right? You talk about entitlement, right? So you have to remember experiences is very important too in being a leader. The more experiences you have and you put yourself through, right? There's experiences that happen to you, and then there are experiences you can actually seek out. Yeah. And the more experiences you have, I think you start looking at empathy in different ways, where if someone shared with me, I lost my job this year.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, the kindness in me may want to say, well, at least you had a job and you're not in a situation, at least this, at least that, where you just lost the feeling. Empathy is almost connecting with not what's happening, but what someone is feeling. Yeah. But an interesting story I'll share with you as I've been studying empathy recently that I came across. I've been fascinated by just following different leaders. And again, to me, leaders are not just so example, I was fascinated with, with elections going on right now, presidents, but more the first ladies, right? Like what do the first ladies go through? So I came across
I'm very curious to know that, by the way, at least your thoughts on it.
But I'm curious, I read this story. Again, I don't know, don't quote me. I don't know if this is a true story or a myth. But the story resonated with me, and I want to share that. It's of Eleanor Roosevelt. When she was the first lady, she hosted this dinner at the White House, and etiquette is something that's important, right? When you're going to these formal dinners, and one of the guests had a finger bowl, and the way it was set up, there was a finger bowl, and if you don't know what a finger bowl is, people put their hands in, wash their hands, or can clean their hands when they're done eating, if anything was touched, or pre-rinse your hand before you eat. And one of the guests picked up the finger bowl and just drank from it. And typically, again, empathy, right? Someone may feel the need to correct or to, maybe comment on it, even in a kind way, where Eleanor Roosevelt saw that and saw other guests staring at this particular guest in a not very nice way, that she picked up the finger bowl and drank from it too. Quickly, when the guests saw the first lady do this, they all started to follow, right? And I think she shows something that that is very graceful and empathy on a whole different level. Is, I may not know why you did that. I'm not trying to be so kind and teach you the right way, but it's okay to make an error. I'm with you. Right. And she just made it more about making that person feel comfortable, making that person feel safe, and making that person not go through what could have been very embarrassing, right? To walk
Absolutely.
out.
Yeah.
So I again, to answer your question, I think empathy is very important, and it could be looked upon in so many ways that we can empathize.
Absolutely. One of my greatest bosses ever explained it to me this way, and it still resonates with me till today about leadership. He maybe he had read The Servant Leader, or maybe he was just ahead of his time. This was about 8 to 10 years ago. I don't know if the book was even out back then. But he talked about being a leader as being a parent. And he said, look, when you're a parent, your job is not to dominate your kid. Your job is not to force your kid. Your job is to be a servant, at a service to your kid. Whatever your kid needs, whatever he or she needs, you are providing them with guided choices. But again, they're choices. They can choose to succeed at it or they can choose to fail at it. Your job is to make sure they have the tools and the education to make their own decisions. And if they fail, they learn from it. And if they succeed, it's their success, right? And that's what leadership is. He really truly saw his employees as his customers because those were the people that he was dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So his entire job, his entire mindset was not that I'm leading you guys to fulfill my agendas. My job is to give you what you need so you can then deal with the customers in a manner that you need so the company's revenue can grow and our shareholder value increases and the stakeholders are all happy. He understood that his part in this massive machine was to take care of his customers. And I don't think I've ever heard it better than that. I don't think I've ever heard it described better than that. And that's always resonated with me till this day. And I think that's the reason why I'm such a big believer on servant leadership. It is a truly, truly great model.
I love it. I think I have a whole new respect for parents in general because
Oh,
they are leaders in a whole different level where you're managing a home, managing a kid, one child or multiple children,
yes.
and figuring out how to, I say, keep these tiny children alive and well and safe and healthy. But also, children are basically tiny adults in training.
Hmm.
So you're also spending so much time building these future leaders and what that looks like. So I
Yeah.
love talking to fellow parents because you can learn a lot of leadership skills
Yeah.
talking to different parents and also educators, right? People who I think now more than ever during COVID-19,
Hmm.
I wish all teachers were getting paid $1 million. I mean, I know how the times have changed in the education realm and
Right.
how hard educators are working to figure it out with us. So I
Mhm.
always have to remind myself that we there's no right or wrong answer. We need to be kind to each other during this time with whatever decisions we make.
Yeah. I so let me get your thoughts on this on the education system itself, right? My wife is a Montessori teacher. She is a therapist for kids with autism, and she's changed my philosophy on education. But even there, I see such a huge dichotomy. Our teachers, our secular teachers, are paid close to nothing. They pay for their own supplies most of the times because they're so passionate about what they do, and the resources are so limited. But then there is this massive push on the other end where people like you and I, influencers, we're essentially doing the exact same thing. We're passing around knowledge. We're teaching people how to do things. There's so much value given on this side because we have some specialized knowledge, yet the value on this side, how to create the basics, the fundamentals that these teachers are providing to our kids, is completely ignored. And I don't know how we get away from that. I don't know how the world so far has gone away from that. Where do you see the, I guess, where do you see the roadblocks? What's the reason why teachers are so under, I don't want to say underappreciated because I know we appreciate it, but underpaid?
First off, thank you to your wife. I think working with children and especially those with special needs is, huge respect to her, and please share my gratitude with her. And this goes out to all teachers and educators. If you're listening, I think the first step is for everyone to recognize how much they do. And this goes back to our empathy conversation, right? How do you know and really feel what these teachers do unless you're in those shoes? And
Yeah.
you said it, right? You said your perspective changed too after seeing and learning of everything she does.
Yes.
So I think that part is missing in the world. It's, sometimes, especially during these times, there's a set of parents that just trust the school system so much that they've taken a backseat and they're like, they must have gotten it. My children will be safe. What options do I have, right? Which are very different this year than ever, with in-school learning, hybrid, and virtual learning on the rise.
Yeah.
And then funding for these schools vary. So I'll give you an example. I used to work for a four-year institution, a very good four-year institution. And when I worked there, I met someone who worked at a community college, a two-year community college, which definitely at that time I thought, we need to get these students to go to four-year universities. We need to make sure that students are getting the best quality schools. And I didn't know a lot about two-year community colleges. But again, funding, I did an internship there with someone, and I ended up getting a full-time job there and getting significantly higher pay than I was at a pretty good four-year institution. So again, I started learning about funding a little bit and how our educational organizations are funded, from public schools to charter schools to universities to the private sector. So I don't have the answer of what can change this, but I think there's a bigger view of how funding is offered to these different groups and where the money is going and how it's being utilized. So that's one aspect. And then the other, you said there's a lot of teachers who buy their own school supplies and things in the classroom and go above and beyond. And, some of them have the means, and some of them, even if they don't have the means, do it. Yeah. So I think for all parents and or caretakers of children who are sending their children to these schools, communicate with those schools, become, advocates and ambassadors for your students and for all children, and see where you can help. I know our teachers always put out wish lists of things that they can provide in the classroom, or if there's any way we can donate or give back. We're very active parents in that. I mean, right now we're not able to volunteer at the schools because of safety reasons. So this is another way we are looking to give back. And I tell all educators, it never hurts to ask, right? Even leaders, anyone in any situation you're in, if you don't ask,
you're not gonna get it.
Yeah. So at least ask, and you'll be surprised of how many people, how many organizations, how many partnerships you may get to help with that need. Right. And even just small things you could do for teachers, right? We like to just, when there's opportunity, to give them anything to make them feel special and appreciated, which they should.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rosey, let me change tracks on you a little bit. I know you've got your pulse on a lot of companies, especially the area that you're in, and you're educating them on a day-to-day, month-to-month type of basis. The current environment that we're in right now, right? COVID has completely changed the world. It's been a year of grit and determination for businesses, for individuals, for the world in general. What do you see the shift when we finally get out of COVID, especially for small to mid-sized businesses? That's the area that I'm always curious about. What do you think the areas are that they need to change or get better at to be able to survive and even thrive in the next 5 to 7 years after this?
It's tough because pre-COVID and during COVID, there's one thing I believe in, is investing in your people. Oh yeah. I think if you invest in people, your businesses will be okay. Yes. Because those individuals will work hard, or they'll be with you even during these tough times. Yeah. It's easy for an employee to say, there's a lot of people getting furloughed. There's a lot of people who have unfortunately lost their jobs. And then there's quite a few people who are doing really well. So I
Mhm.
also challenge them to think about how they can give back to the community during these times versus just have a let me grow and let me make the money and let me be rich. So it's
Yeah.
interesting you say there's that portion of the world, and if you want to research the numbers on how many of them fall in this like very wealthy category and how many are not, who are in ultra poverty or poverty, and how
Mhm.
many are in middle, right?
Yeah.
So I think it becomes so first and foremost, educating and providing support to your teams, whoever you work with. That
Right.
becomes very important. And I think for people who are struggling and businesses who are struggling, right? I think
Mhm.
I always refer to one leader that I look up to, which is the Aga Khan, for those who are
Mhm.
familiar. And he always has said to replace fear with hope. And
Yeah.
for some reason, that has resonated with me more today than ever because I'm constantly thinking what can go wrong versus what can go right,
Yeah.
which again, my brain, is looking at fear versus hope.
Yeah.
And COVID is, I don't know, right? We don't know. It's an uncertain time if this is going away, if it's staying.
Mhm.
How long is it going to be here? And we have to adapt and figure out how to live with this now and grow during this time.
Yeah.
So, to everyone that is in that struggling place, I would say don't give up, right? And have that hope. Continue to learn where you can. Reach out to your networks and see
Yeah.
what else, what other opportunities are out there, or
Mhm.
what else you can do differently. Because sometimes I feel when something doesn't go well, you are either trying the same thing over and over,
Yeah.
and maybe just again those experiences, that education, those two E's I keep referring back to,
Yeah.
becomes very important. That have you tried something different?
Mhm.
And also, I think this is a great opportunity for some to, if you have the time, to look into other things that you have desire to do
Yeah.
that could potentially become something that could be a great business, right?
Mhm.
When again I go back to, if you love what you do, how can you also, you have to also live in this world, and I believe in that. But
Right.
I also believe in your physical health, being healthy during this time, but also your mental health and where that
Yeah.
is. So if you can take this time to work on those things, I think you can come back
Yeah.
stronger than ever.
So I like that a lot because so you said fear and hope, and I've heard Dagar Khan say it multiple times. One of the biggest things I want to put this into practice that I deal with when I work with a company is I have to change their mindset from instead of working on issues, let's find opportunities. Because I feel like as soon as and again, businesses are very much like individuals. They're basically a mirror copy of the owner themselves, right? And we as people have a tendency of waking up and figuring out what issues do we need to solve for the day, right? And if we don't have issues, then we go find somebody else's issues to solve. We wait for people's emails. We work on these quad three activities. But the most successful ones are the ones that have defined their plan and they wake up and they know their quad two activities. They know their opportunities and what they need to work on. So I 100% agree. If companies just kind of shifted their mind and said, let's stop worrying about issues and let's start focusing on opportunities first, and the issues will eventually take care of themselves. I think that is a massive area for growth and success. And like you said, this podcast that you and I are on right now, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't due to COVID, if it wasn't due to the extra time that we had, the ability to be able to reach out to the network and the ability to be able to create content. This will eventually lead down to something down the line. So even in this crisis, there's a great opportunity, whether you want to be a content creator, whether you want to learn a new skill, whether you want to learn some soft skills that you've been holding off on for so long, there's an opportunity for you to do basically anything. And the surprising thing is, the majority of the population won't take advantage of that opportunity. So if you do, when this is over, you'll definitely be ahead of the curve. because you'll be one of the ones who came out more than what you had actually gone in with.
Mhm, mhm. And during these times, I know that there's some that are thinking of hindrances to do all of those things you mentioned, right? Like
Yeah.
is it finance? Is it time? Is it juggling those things? And, time, that's one thing constant in life, right? It's never going
Yeah.
to stop. It's going to keep going. And so you kind
Yeah.
of almost have to make time and look at priorities in your life and
Yeah.
how you prioritize it. But I think this is where one thing I really admire about you, and that got me every time we have spoken this year and even today.
Mhm.
We're both kind of giving back to the community, right? Whether it's through these
Yeah.
podcasts, through these conversations. So that's something I know for Lead a Faith that we're committing to. That if there are businesses and corporations and educational institutions, nonprofit organizations that are looking for speakers, that are looking for leadership trainings, that are looking for anything specific, we will create it for you, right?
Yeah.
And work with you. We are offering these services free right
Yeah.
now, right? To give back to this community during these uncertain times. We're also, I mean, these podcasts you're doing, right? Think about even the conversations we've had just offline, right? I think
Yeah.
there's so many people out there, and one thing I have truly believed in and very passionate about is mentorship. Like mentoring is so important
Mhm.
on both levels. For those that, and everyone can do this, you
Mhm.
all can be a mentor to someone.
Yeah.
And at all points in your life, you should seek mentoring as well. And
Yeah.
really go out there and talk to people you admire, people in businesses or organizations or positions that you want to be. I think it's really important to both give and also seek. I always
Yeah.
keep great mentors around me since I was young and even today, and I hope to forever,
Yeah.
because I think it helps you again grow and learn and see the world in a different lens, right?
Yes.
Which is also a great aspect of being a great leader.
Yeah. The podcast that I was on today, one of the things that was reminded over to me was don't be afraid to ask for help, which is exactly what you're saying. I think especially within our society, more than any place else, and this might just be a biased opinion because I've been brought up in our society. To me, it seems like when you asked for help, or at least previously, you were looked down upon as a failure, right? You couldn't figure it out. But the one thing that I've learned is coaches, mentors, they don't have the magic pill, they don't have the formula. They just have the knowledge gaps that you're missing. Now, you can absolutely go learn it on your own, but what is the cost of time and opportunity to you versus going and asking and saying, hey, I need this knowledge. Can you help me out? And you will eventually be in a position one day to pass that along to somebody else. So if you're not open to ask for help, you'll never be the person who's going to be able to help somebody else out. And I do think because of people like you and what our community is doing now, that that area is opening up. People are starting to ask for help without feeling the stigma of failure behind them. They're much more comfortable now to come out and say, I have a gap. I need this gap to be filled. Who's willing to come talk to me about it? Yeah. So
I
that
think
is,
I think that's excellent. I think for those who are, like you said, have that perspective of if I'm reaching out,
Mhm.
then they feel almost not good enough, right?
Yeah.
And I think internally a lot, there's people who struggle with that where they feel, am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing before a big presentation? Before, again,
Yeah.
that fear, right? That thought, like, what does this really mean?
Yeah.
But I think, like you said it, right? If you reach out, if you look at any successful person in the world
Hmm.
and how they got to where they did, they will always talk about someone special in their life
Yeah.
that provided them support in any way to get them there. whether it was through mentoring, whether it was through financial help, whether it was through just kindness or offering them a home if they were traveling, whatever that might be. I mean, think about even, I like to research a lot of successful people. So even if you look at Steve Jobs, right? And I don't know what phone you have, but
I have an iPhone.
there we go.
Yeah.
Right. So we can agree he did good. He
He is
did great.
legendary. He is absolutely legendary.
But if you research him and listen to how he got to where he did, he always referenced many mentors in his life, and one in particular was his fourth grade teacher,
Yes.
who was Imogene Hill, who he called Miss Teddy. And she used to force him to study and focus and learn and really maximize on his creativity. And that turned out pretty well for him, right? So, and you can look at so many different successful people, and there's always someone else that has been working with them or providing them that support to get them to where they are, right? So when you think about leadership, to me, sometimes I ask, like, is it these successful people, or is it those who is it Miss Teddy who should get the credit, right? And all these individuals that supported these people to get there. So don't underestimate. I tell everyone, no matter who you are and what position you are or what you're doing, you have the opportunity. I hear you say that word and I love it. The opportunity to do great things. We're all made for that, and we all can accomplish that.
Yeah. I think people are just so focused on the destination, right? So when they see Steve Jobs and they see Apple now hitting $2 trillion and the richest company in the world, and I know Jobs is not around anymore, but when they see that, most of the times people think, man, I wish I would have came up with an iPad or an iPhone, or maybe I should have created this. That's not the case. It wasn't the iPhone, it wasn't the iPad, it was his journey to walk his own path, to create this company, to leave this company, to come back to the company, to reduce their product line, to say no to a lot of different things, to start Pixar because he believed in it. Like, it was the journey and the people that came along this path, like Miss Imogene, and those are the people that helped him along. If we just took our eyes away from the destination and said, what is it that Jobs did throughout this journey to make him successful? I think it will change people's lives forever. It was actually because of Steve Jobs. So I work on my clients with this one pager, but it was because of Steve Jobs that I named this one pager the journey rather than the destination, because it was very clear to me that you're going to get to the destination and you're not going to be satisfied if you don't like the journey. So if you respect the journey, you'll love the destination so much more. And I'll give you my example. Before I launched this podcast, I contacted you, right? I had reached out to you and I said, "Hey, Rosey, I'm thinking about jumping into this world. I've done it on and off. I haven't really done it on a structural level. You've been doing it. What is it that I can do to kind of slingshot my way up there?" And you gave me a ton of advice, and one of them was create content, right? Create massive content. And you were a driving factor into me launching this. So you were part of my journey that one day I'm going to go back and say, this person came into my life and told me to do this, and this is where I got to from that one advice. I absolutely believe that.
You are so kind and thoughtful. What's interesting is this is my first official podcast, and I'm old school. A big part of how Lead a Faith even got formed, going back to your first question to me, is I'm an in-person. Let me come to you. Let me speak to you. One thing that even everywhere I worked, whether it was when I was at the 2-year college, and we would work with recruiting and advising, I wanted to sit with students and help them one-on-one. I wanted to go to the schools and talk to the students and I think leaders need to show up and show their face, right? And talk to them. Even when I was working with iMentors, which was a nationally led mentoring program for our community, I went to every training across the nation to physically be there. I mean, we have project teams, team members, and leaders that were very capable of doing this and completely partnered with me and presented,
Right.
but I wanted to be there. I wanted to support in person.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that with our conversation, it's mutual. One thing that I think you and I talked about is where I struggled is all this technology that has become more important today when
Yeah.
that face-to-face interaction has decreased, is
Mhm.
how do you connect with people when you can't really meet them during
Yeah.
these times, right? Or even when you do, we have the masks, we have the social distancing, and we have all of these different things in place to keep our world safe, which is very important. But how do you still build connection?
Yeah. How do you
And
focus?
and I think those are back to what is leadership. It's all of those different skill sets, and I have my favorite C words that I talk about all the time,
Mhm.
which includes the compassion, the
Mhm.
communication, the commitment, and of course connection. Right?
Yeah.
How do you build that now on these online platforms? And I think what you're doing is amazing, and I'm really happy. I didn't know
Thank
that
you.
that conversation helped in you doing this, but you're doing amazing. I think you're reaching so many people, and
Thank
you are
you.
also a great leader that I admire and learn from. I mean, I've learned so much from this conversation, and I'm grateful for that.
No, I appreciate it. I don't know if I ever did tell you that, but yes, the conversation you and I had kind of nudged me a little to say, I have all this content. I can either just take it to my grave, or I can release it out there into the world, and karma will sooner or later come back to me. And you use your C word. So one of my favorite C words is compassionate authenticity. Is to be yourself, but don't be arrogant. Don't be ignorant. Just because somebody else has a difference of opinion doesn't mean that you're right and they're wrong. So respectfully agree to disagree, but don't ever disrespect. And I think that is one thing that's really truly helped me get to the place that I'm at, because I'm a very passionate person, and I'm a Taurus. So I am very bullheaded. I know that I've got opinions, and sometimes it's hard to change my mind. But the one thing I've learned over life, and this is mainly through my wife, he's really, really helped me with this area, is understand the difference of opinion and respect the difference of opinion. And that is one thing that's really led to my success till this point right now. So there's people, especially in my life, there's a lot of women. I'm very much comfortable talking to women in general, that have kind of guided me to this point. One of my favorite teachers was Miss Villa DeVell. She was my ESL teacher in I think fourth grade, fifth grade. I don't remember. She's the only one I remember because she was so nice and compassionate and helped me when my English wasn't up to par. When I was teased and bothered and made fun of, she guided me. So I believe there's these people that come and change your life and kind of go away, but you remember their impact for a long, long time, and hopefully forever.
Have you ever connected with her or told her this?
I last saw her probably right before my high school graduation. And this is going to give away my age. I graduated in 1999. Since then, I have no idea where she is. I haven't reached out to her. I have no idea. And when I graduated high school, I'm not the person I am right now. I wasn't as confident. I had no idea what I was doing with my life. I was just going through the motions. I wish I could see her now to tell her that you made an impact, and maybe that impact didn't show up back then, but it's definitely here now. I remember the compassion and I appreciate it a lot.
Well, I would say reach out to her. I think those that have impacted your lives,
Mhm.
it's an important, I think it's one of the things Lead of Faith focuses on is leading with grace. And grace has become my favorite word. And I've been just studying it, understanding it. And there's
Yeah.
probably hours we can talk about just what grace means. But
Yeah.
being gracious and graceful,
Mhm.
one thing I always remind myself to also do is to take some time out to show my gratitude and my
Yeah.
graciousness to those that have impacted me. Can
Yeah.
you imagine if somebody calls you today that you have not connected with in decades and says, Faisal, you impacted my life. Thank you. I mean, you don't know how much that, especially during these times more than ever, what that can do for someone. So I always say, like, go back to people who have impacted you. The other thing I love about what you said is you referenced your wife and your family. And this goes back to my being a lifelong learner. And one of the C's is communication, and not just communication, but effective communication. But one way, a lot of my content, you will not believe, comes from my family.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the funniest situations that happen with my husband and me to my two boys who are 3 and 6, who remind me how to be a better leader every day on patience and thinking about how to really enjoy life, how to be resilient. I mean, there's so many things I have learned and from them, and so much content that that comes from them on how their brains work and how they solve challenges so differently than someone with as much education, degrees, experiences that it's interesting to see. So sometimes when I'm in those situations, for those that are blessed with families, talk to them, you know, and actually sit down an hour every day during these times and make it just a time to learn from each other, because now you have a number of individuals with different experiences, different background, different perspectives. And you can bring a lot when you converse to the table, when you are in that, where you can see the world in all of those perspectives, and you're ever changing. Like, I don't think I am who I was 10 years ago, or even a year ago, or even yesterday. I feel like, I handled it this way. I thought that was great, but I didn't think of this, right? Because I didn't know. I mean, it's not about a good or bad. It's just more knowledge and more ways to lead gracefully.
You don't know what you don't know. So I'll relate to you on that. Every Wednesday on LinkedIn, I do a personal video, and it's just me talking about anecdotal stuff that I've learned. My content always comes from my family. So last week I did a content where my daughter and I were sitting down and talking. She loves art. She is amazing at it. That's what she does all day long. And she's 7 now. So I asked her, I'm like, what do you want to be when you grow up? She's like, I want to be an artist. And for a minute, my growth mind kind of went down and my concerned parent mind took over. I'm like, what are you going to do being an artist? What type of money are you going to make? I almost told her, hey, maybe you should look into something else. And then I stopped. I was like, you know, just because I can't see a future doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I literally had to take a step back and realize I was about to crush somebody's dream, somebody I love more than anything else in this world. I was about to be the person who hurt them. And I made a whole video on that, talking about how you should let people be in your life, and when they fail, and they will fail, don't use that as an excuse to bring them down. Understand they will fail, and then bring them back up and say, go try again. And my next week's video, my wife told me this week I'm a bad storyteller. She's just like, you are horrible at storytelling. And I kind of sat there, I was like, man, I do podcasts. I tell stories all the time, and I'm a bad storyteller. And I recorded a video on that saying, well, I'm better than what I was 10 years ago. So I'm going to take that as a success story. So I agree. These people, especially the ones closest to you, they will bring you down to earth and say, you have a lot of growing to do. You're nowhere close to where you want to be.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, I love the fact you shared that, because even young children fascinate me. I've always worked with students from, you know, birth all the way to the higher education sector. And when I think about artists, you know, I always wonder, like we were talking about our phones, right? Like, if you really think an artist created like an iPhone, right? What does the looks and feels? You have to have an artistic brain to come up with some of these looks and feels of anything in the world. So when young people say, I want to be an artist or a doctor or a teacher, or I want to go to the moon, or a firefighter or a chef, or whatever that might be, I challenge parents to really think through on maximizing on the sparks
Yeah.
that these children have, because
Mhm.
you never know what that can lead to.
Yeah.
And that's an area where, again, those skills where sometimes leaders don't have is that artist way of
Yeah.
thinking. So I love that she wants to be an artist, and I'm sure her work is beautiful. And I can't wait to see where her journey leads her, and how much more we can learn and grow from these tiny adults in
Yes.
training.
They really truly are adults, self-destructive adults, but really truly are adults.
I have two boys, so you don't got to tell me about that.
Oh, God bless your heart. Yes, I forgot about that. So I have a 3-year-old boy. He's an abundant of energy, like just does not stop. My daughter is and was an angel. She was like, I swear God made her, handed her over, and said, "Here you go. This is the best thing ever." And she she had her issues where she wouldn't sleep through the night, but she was calm, collected, always very cuddly, compassionate. And this boy is just everywhere. He's fun, but he is everywhere. To the point where I want to call my mom someday and be like, "I'm so sorry for whatever I did when I was that young, and whatever you had to go through. I'm so sorry."
Yeah. I actually do that all the time. I call my mom and I'm like, I'm so sorry if I ever said anything or did anything.
Yeah,
You value parents a whole different way. I remember growing up, my mom and dad would say, "Wait till you become a parent," and it
yeah.
used to annoy me. I'm like, "What does that mean?" And
Every
now,
brown parent had that line.
I'm sure all parents are thinking the same thing with their children. Like,
Yeah,
wait till you become parents. Hopefully, you'll know
it
too.
repeats itself every time. Well, Rosie, this was amazing. I can continue talking to you for hours. You know that, right? But this was really, really great. I want to give you the opportunity. If people want to connect with you, if they want to talk to you, where can they find you? How can they reach out to you? And what areas should they reach out to you for help or assistance?
Absolutely. So, it's a one-stop shop, I would say, for a lot of different things, right? And primarily, Lead of Faith is a platform where we want to unite leaders from everywhere around the world to come together and have a place where they can share content, they can share inspiration,
Yeah,
and just like you and I are doing, a place where we can speak and inspire and start a movement, I would say, in this world,
yeah,
on being better leaders and creating future leaders as well. But where you can reach out if you're looking for anything specific, like any leadership trainings or a motivational speaker or an inspirational speaker, or just someone for a consultation on some of these things, they
mhm,
can find me on LinkedIn. They can email at leadoffaith@gmail.com.
mhm,
And I'm very quick at responding to any requests that come in. We're also on social media,
mhm.
on Facebook and Instagram. So you can follow. We're newbies on there, so you can follow at Lead of Faith to get some weekly motivation and some updates on things we're working on and things and where we're headed.
Uh,
So that's the gist of that. And then, of course, if anyone calls you, feel free to
yeah,
send them my way and share my phone number. I'm always happy to, especially work with referrals and people I know.
yeah,
Just want to give back to our community, and especially those that don't have access to some of these things, right? That how can we either provide that or find you someone or somewhere where you can get that. So if there's something that, let's say, we cannot do,
mhm.
we will commit to helping you, even finding that for you
Yeah.
in any way we can.
Absolutely. Guys, I will make sure that I put the link to all of Rosie's contacts within the podcast link. Reach out to her. I can personally tell you that she's helped me a lot to be able to get to this point. She's definitely a great person to talk to. If nothing else, just to get some clarity of mind and how you should move forward. Lead of Faith is the truth. So reach out to her. And again, thank you so much for being on this podcast. Rosie, I want to bring you back. I'm gonna bother you until we get another commitment. So look out for that. And besides that, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for joining. Bye bye.
Thank you.